And we are live. Welcome to a channel that hasn't had much activity lately. And I know that. You know that. If you are a subscriber to this channel, like 554,000 people are, 553,914 of you are like, how come Mike doesn't post anymore? I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I have a job that, that requires time and energy. I'm self-employed, which is nice, but it's a job nonetheless. I will just work for myself. So I've just been busy, guys. I've been busy and trying to kind of figure out where the cop thing still fits into my life. So a lot of you know that I do help cops in the real estate space and all that stuff with the 10-7 project. And I'm on the board of a nonprofit called Relentless Defender. So I'm still doing a lot in the police space. I just haven't been making content around it. That's just what it comes down to. And if you're wondering who this dashing fellow on the screen is, that all he's missing is a Wilson volleyball to talk to as
Right.
well. It's Pat Flynn. And Pat is, I'll let you tell more
Sure.
about yourself, but I would describe him as the Swiss Army knife of creators. I don't know, like you're a
Sure, man.
fitness minimalist, fellow believer in Jesus, and you support cops. You don't hate cops, and you are a philosopher. You've got a book coming out about philosophy.
Yeah,
You've
man.
got other books out already, more coming. So lots of cool stuff. And we're going to talk about cops and fitness. It is an epidemic. But before we jump into some of the specific stuff we're going to talk about as far as fitness and first responders, tell the good people who you are, what you want them to know about you.
Yeah. Who or what is Pat Flynn? Good to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me on. As always, it's great to chat with you. We've been friends for a while, but I think this is the first time that we've ever actually done anything together. So
Yeah,
excited.
about
Yeah, excited
about
about
time,
this. Right.
maybe.
We've talked about it for a while, and then finally we're here. Right. So yeah, my name is Pat Flynn. I sometimes like to, like make the initial qualification. I'm probably the second most famous Pat Flynn on the internet.
Yeah,
There's
right.
that other Pat Flynn,
There's another Pat
the
Flynn.
smart passive income Pat Flynn, and we've done something. I was on his podcast a while ago, so we could clear up the confusion. I'm not that Pat Flynn. I'm the Pat Flynn who does all the other stuff, especially the philosophy and fitness. So yeah, I guess my formal background is philosophy in terms of schooling and academics and whatnot. And like you said, I've got a book coming out on philosophy. It's actually a book on philosophy of God. You mentioned I'm a Christian, which is true, but I wasn't always. I was actually sort of an atheistic naturalist for many years, and then it was philosophy that sort of veered me towards the more religious path. And the book I'm writing on that, it is a philosophy book proper, but it considers a lot of the various worldview considerations that caused me to change my mind on very important issues. So that book's called The Best Argument for God, and it's forthcoming in October if anyone wants to check it out. So that's what's going on in that realm of mine. But fitness, yeah, where does that come in? Well, long story short, I kind of grew up that unathletic, really chubby video game nerd, right? And by high school, I had kind of become sick of that. I was always like the fat kid among my friends, is the kid that was easy to pick on. I was never like super bullied or anything like that. So I'm not trying to tell a sad story or anything. But I became sick of being that fat kid, right? So I decided it's time to get my act together. And I did it by really stumbling into the world of martial arts. And Taekwondo was my first introduction there. I had a phenomenal coach. He taught me really great fundamentals of fitness and nutrition that I underwent a pretty serious physical transformation by the time I was in college. And I fell in love with physical culture, with weight training and fitness and martial arts as well. That to pay my way through college, I just tried to get as much, as many certifications and as much experience as I could, training people, running classes, all that good stuff. I got really involved in the kettlebell world because I found this was the perfect tool for just sort of general functional fitness, very minimalist, very efficient. Uh, and in fact, this led to me training a lot of first responders and military. I would be brought down to like Camp Lejeune to work with MARSOC and special forces, and even locally at the place we used to run in Pennsylvania. I live in Wisconsin now, but back in Pennsylvania, we were always working with firefighters, with police. They found that the training methodology was really effective, very efficient. It was fun too, right? Challenging but fun. So, like you said, definitely a supporter of the police. It's a deep passion of mine to help equip them in terms of being functionally fit for the job, not just looking good, but feeling good, being resilient, resistant to injury, death proof, as we sometimes like to call it, harder to kill, however you want to phrase it, right? Um, so yeah, that's a lot of stuff. I'll probably just pause there, Mike, and let you pick up whatever thread you want rather than just prattling
Yeah,
on
I
and on.
mean,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, obviously you're here because I've never claimed to be, nor I don't think that I ever want to claim to be God's gift to fitness. Um, I have tricked myself into exercise mostly over the years. I actually grew up doing Korean martial arts like Taekwondo and stuff like that from the
Yeah.
time I was like 7 until, man, like right up until the time that I got married and then I started a family and I kind of like got away from that for a long time. And then um, when I became a cop, I started doing Krav Maga was what my police department sent us to. So that kind of like got me into that world. And I was like kind of rediscovered the martial arts as it were in that sense. And then that led me into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Right.
And then I was hooked and I've been doing that since. And that's like tricks me into exercise. Uh, and up until I really discovered the kettlebells over the last year, like got more serious about them. I've just realized like even if I get away from them for a little bit, I always come back because I feel like it is like sort of like the minimum effective dose sort of approach. I don't like going to the gym. I don't like barbell exercises. I don't have the desire to get as much weight on the bar as possible. It's just
Right.
not my thing. And that's not a it's not a knock on people who enjoy that or there's not benefit. I just for me, it was the kettlebell stuff. And that's like the mix of the perfect mix that you've had of kettlebell philosophy and minimalism is what first connected me to you. And so it's been good. But for me, I have to push myself to things that are not as fun. So learning to make kettlebells fun but efficient is something that like helps me or helped me be able to maintain a decent fitness standard in
Right.
addition to jujitsu, as a cop. But
Yes.
the concerning thing, and this is where I guess we can kind of park for a little bit and just talk about maybe some of the excuses that emerge
Hmm.
or reasons for this. But I was trying to find accurate studies, and I know that sometimes labeling people as obese or saying they are obese is a little tricky because I was just talking to a guy about this a couple of days ago. His doctor said, well, you're 40 pounds overweight. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you should be 140 for this guy is like a 40-some-year-old dude. You should be 140 pounds for your height. He is a short guy. And he's like, I would die if I was 140 pounds,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
And
maybe
sometimes if you've got a good amount of muscle too, it can.
yeah. So he was
Right.
like, I don't know. So I don't know the accuracy of this in terms of like how they how they conducted the study. But um, in general, they say about 39.6% or 40% of adults over the age of 20 would be considered obese.
Yeah.
A recent study conducted by the FBI, and well, I'm going to throw out there that I'm not a huge fan of the FBI or CDC, so I don't know about these trust. I don't, I don't know, but
Mm.
I don't know that they have an axe to grind in this particular fight. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
they showed that 8 out of 10 cops are overweight.
Yeah.
And then another study that was done by the American Journal of Preventive Medicine came up with their number of 40.7% of police firefighters. They included security guards in here. Uh, they are obese. So, regardless of the the actual, the real actual number, I think what we can agree on is that
There's a problem.
out of shape cops are a problem,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, for a number of reasons.
Not just doing, their job, but I remember I was working with a guy back in my hometown. His name's Dan Kerrigan. He actually wrote the book Firefighter Functional Fitness. And I consulted him on some of the material. And the reason he was so interested in working with me and bringing people to work with me was just because, he always he didn't like to report it, but he always had to report it. Hey, what's the number one killer of firefighters? Heart attacks, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Heart attacks, right? It's not what people would think, which is, fire or something like that, right? It's just like it's
Yeah.
no, it's like we have a serious health and fitness issue going on, right? So I'm often, I've always, when it comes to military or first response, I'm kind of often brought in to solve one of two extremes, right? One is just an utter lack of any useful activity at all, right? Effort towards fitness and health. The other is trying to fix a good amount of effort, but applied in not the best directions, right? This is more common with military, and part of the reason I'd be brought down to like Camp Lejeune or something like that is they were working out, but they were going crazy with it and constantly hurting themselves and right,
Mhm.
right, hyper competitive. So it was like, okay, how can we make your training a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more purposeful, and stuff like that. Uh, I'd say that's generally less common. It might be more common in certain circles. The more common issue is what you've identified, Mike, is that
Mhm.
we just have to start doing something, right? Like fitness is not optional, not just for first responders and cops and firefighters, but I mean for everybody. We know that if you want to, have a greater health span, this is the term that people are using right now, that regular exercise and in particular resistance training, like this is especially important as you age. Resistance training in particular is absolutely crucial to remaining vigorous, vital, healthy, all that sort of thing. So yeah, we can go to details as we go along, but I don't think there's any debating that this is a problem. Right? We can quibble about what the exact percentages are, or like
Right.
when does somebody become obese? Well, it's kind of like the beard, right? When exactly do you have a beard? It's hard to say. There's philosophical issues of arbitrariness
Yeah.
there,
What,
but at
do
the
I
same
have
time,
a
it's not
beard?
it's
Do I
it's
have a
not
beard right now?
it's not
I don't
hard
know.
to identify a beard when you see one, right? It's not hard to identify somebody who's obese when you see somebody who is obese, even if it's unclear. It's like exactly when that happened. Like who cares, right? Clearly, people are obese. It's a problem. Let's start talking about solutions rather than just being argumentative jerks about stuff that doesn't matter, right?
Right. Yeah. And then I have this thumbnail picture that I did. That's an example
That is somebody who needs to lose some weight, straight
that
up.
that's an issue, right? So like,
Yep.
um, and there's a saying in the police world. I don't know if there's anybody to attribute it to, but it's common. It's like once you become a cop, you give up the right or you lose the right to be unfit, right? Out of shape. You lose that. Like it should be a non-option. And one of the crazy things is when you usually there's a pre-academy fitness standard, right? Like a test. And we can argue the goodness of those tests, but there is at least some standard that's like before you can even start the academy, you have to be able to perform these functional fitness tests to a certain level to even be accepted. And
Right.
then when you get in, then the standard same test, but at the end of the academy. So for us, we had one midway through the academy that had to be at a certain point, and then the end. And so you had to improve upon those numbers. Those were just entry numbers. Those weren't graduation numbers. So you
Yeah.
had to like reach a certain standard. And then from there on, I could have I would have never had another fitness test ever at my department. Ever. I could have there was nothing, there was no standard at all for it post graduation. Now, a couple of neighboring and area departments, one, they had an annual fitness test where you would get if you were in like A band, like the top, I think it was like an $1,100 bonus or like a certain number of days off or whatever. So you could get money or time like in exchange for it. But the thing is, a lot of guys didn't even do it. They just didn't do it because they knew they wouldn't do well. So then,
Right.
but there was no negative to doing it. There was just a positive. So there was an incentivization or incentivation, incentivization. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyway,
Sure.
but yeah, there's no standard after,
Mhm.
and so it's on the individual cop, which is I guess if you take your job seriously, then you're going to take that seriously, and you're going to recognize, hey, I owe it to myself or my family or
Mhm.
my partners at the very least to, like, if they need help, I can actually
Yes.
get there and I can perform the tasks, you know. Um,
And that's an important point. It's not just about yourself, obviously, right? It's not just about, and it is about yourself, right? Of course, you want to be healthy, right? You want to be fit, but other people depend upon you, and that's
mhm,
a point you're drawing out. Now, I want to talk about standards just a little bit before we start getting into methodology. Again, we can quibble about what the standards are, but I think that everybody should agree there should be some sort of standards. Having standards is what separates us from the barbarians, right? Like we need standards in life. And like there can be floors and ceilings, there can be ranges, I think, of what's acceptable. So, kind of at the baseline, for somebody to be just kind of like generally functionally fit, I don't think you need to ask a whole lot. Some of these things might seem a little tough, but I do think most men should be able to do a handful of pull-ups, right? People hang from a bar and chin your body weight. And that's a good test because it not only shows that you have pull-ups are good because you kind of have to have a lot of ducks in a row. You have to have pretty good upper body strength, but also upper body mobility and stability, grip strength, which is important. And here's the thing, right? If you're super overweight, pull-ups aren't going to be happening for you, right? So they kind of
mhm,
have they keep you honest about your body weight too, which is
yeah,
important. I think you should be able to get up and off the ground minimally with 3 limbs. Better if you can do it with just 2 limbs. Like, can you get up and off the ground without using your hands, right? And we
mhm,
know that the ability just to get up and off the ground is absolutely essential, right? For so many things, but it's sort of an indicator of longevity as well, along with
yeah,
grip strength. I think you should be able to run 2 miles pretty much at any point fairly easily. I'm not too concerned about what exactly the time is, but at any point you should be able to just kind of like jog 2 miles without it feeling like it was the worst thing that you've ever done, right? Like it should
mhm,
be pretty easy work for you. I think you should be able to deadlift at least your body weight. Better if you can do double body weight, stuff like that. I think you should be able to do at least 10 to 30 good standard push-ups. I think you should be able to stand on one foot for a minute, right? It doesn't sound like much, but like, certain basic, and if you can't, there's something going on there, right? That
yeah,
we want to work on. So when I look at for standards, I'm kind of like looking across a broad domain of physical preparedness: strength, mobility, stability, endurance, balance, proprioception. How well knit that, I mean, together are you? That's sort of how I think about fitness, is this sort of knittingness
mhm,
together, right? The ability, at least for first responders, to be generalists. And by generalists, I mean you don't have to be the best in the world at any one thing, but you should be able to meet the demands, not just of the job, but of daily life. So that's going to require a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of lean muscle. I don't think you need to be a bodybuilder or even should be a bodybuilder. That can often be counterproductive, right? For this particular job.
yeah,
Good amount of endurance, metabolic conditioning capacity, mobility, stability, all that sort of stuff. So none of this is crazy. All of these are certainly within the realm of broad possibility for most people, but it does take a bit of effort. And you definitely want to be intelligent about how you approach that. But if you could check all those boxes, things would be looking pretty good for you for the most part, right?
yeah. It doesn't have to be complex, and I think a lot of people when we carry, and I think it's a natural human thing to carry your assumptions into something. If you don't know, then you fill in the blanks with what it is that your perception is of it or
Yeah.
your assumptions are. So people think like when you talk about fitness or being in shape, then they may have like a particular idea that they're kind of superimposing into it and thinking like, oh, I need to, if I'm going to be truly in shape, I'm going to look like a bodybuilder, or I have to be in the gym doing bro splits and I have to do all this stuff. And that's not accurate
Yeah,
for a
real quick, just
generalist.
just for clarification's sake, fitness is really just the ability to complete a task. That's all fitness means. So it's also important to understand that fitness does not mean health. right?
Mm.
You can be very good at completing tasks and very unhealthy. And in fact, there's many people who pursue fitness in a certain direction at the direct expense of their health. Think of professional powerlifters, right? They're really fit in terms of the ability to lift an obscene amount of weight, but many of them end up on the operating table, right? Because of the demands of that sport, right?
Mhm.
So my approach, at least for most people, most of the time, especially first responders, is like we need these things to be mutually harmonious. Whatever we're doing fitness wise should at the very least not be taking away from your health. And by health, I mean this sort of ideal interplay of the bodily systems, right?
Mhm.
But all the better if it's actively enhancing your health, right? We want these
Yeah.
things to be working together, right? But it is very much possible, and we see this sometimes where people will pursue a line of fitness that is actually in many ways detrimental to their health
Mhm.
for various reasons, whether it's the methodology or just an obsessive attitude over it or whatever. So it's important to keep separate things separate. Fitness is the ability to complete a task. Health is something like the ideal interplay of the organs and bodily systems. They can be and should be harmonious, but sometimes people can put them at odds. Don't do that. Right. Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it makes so much sense. I've been there myself, like trying to push too hard and then, oh, overdoing it and
Right.
making it counterproductive for what the task is at hand. But standards is something I think that we have to re reinforce or reassert into the field. And it's unfortunate that I hear from guys all the time. Well, if the department's not paying for it or giving me the time for it, like I get it, they're overworked. They're working 12 to 18-hour days, uh, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. I just was on the mats with a cop that had just finished, I think, I can't remember if it was 12 or 14 12-hour days in a row. It's like when that's a recipe for disaster. So I get
Yeah,
it, like they're overworked or
totally.
short staffed and all that stuff. And I will, but yet I will get pushback when I say there should be a standard that you should have to meet
Hmm.
for the duration of your career. And I do think that the department should have the standard. And it's not difficult to do even in a busy department. It's
Hmm.
really not. You could rotate those exact things that you just said, which maybe we would tweak it if we were officially making a standard. But if if uh if you needed to be able to do X amount of pull-ups, then they literally like call you in like at some point in your shift on day X, you just have to come in and hop up on the pull-up bar and do them.
Right.
Right? Like, yep, Officer Smith, you're good on pull-ups for the next, 2 months or whatever it is. Like, yep,
Hmm.
you how often you would need to do that to maintain to make sure that the level is being maintained? Well, whatever. I mean, figure that out. But it's not complex though.
Right.
It's
Hmm.
not complex and it's not super time consuming. And do I think that departments should provide the resources for what the job demands? Yes, right? So
Yeah.
like
Totally.
if you're going to work at a law office, if you're an attorney and you get hired at a law office, they're going to give you access to all of the case law that you need. They're going to have many leather-bound books on shelves of rich mahogany, like all there for you to consume, right? They're going to provide you the resources to do your job. And it should be the same in policing. It is not, unfortunately. Not a lot
Right.
of police departments have well-equipped fitness facilities or any at all. They don't have any standard, so they're not doing it. Should they provide that? Yes,
Yeah.
they should. But I think a lot of it comes down to direction. I think that a guy like you
Right.
needs to be someone that they're talking to because
Yeah.
otherwise they're just going to fill in the blank and they'll get, oh, what should we do? Well, let's get a Smith machine in here and let's get this in here
Right.
and put up some
Clutter.
posters and then demand that people use it
Yeah. Yeah.
or
So yeah, a lot of good stuff there. So I want to acknowledge, like, I get it. It's hard work. You're busy. You're tired. I get it. Believe me. And I can't change the policies, obviously, right? But what I can do is I can try to give you an approach that is minimalist and practical and effective. I can try to take down as many barriers to entry or success as possible. So that way the efforts you do put in are actually fruitful.
Mhm.
And over time, I believe actually will enhance your quality of life. Like you will be less tired and less burnout if you actually implement this stuff. And then hopefully, there's shifts in culture or policy, because I'm with you, man. I think 100%, like, all first responders should have all the support they need to be as healthy and fit as possible. And I get that that isn't the reality right now. So we just have to deal with reality and say, okay, well, what can we do given the situation to make this as practical as possible for all of you? So that way you're not just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and wasting your time with just filling, space with random pieces of fitness equipment you have no idea how to use, right? And that's sort of been my shtick for a long time now, is this idea of minimalism and generalism. So for people who are unfamiliar with these two concepts, we sort of talked about generalism before, but that's what I think is the outcome we're going for. And this is to be capable across a broad domain of, you know, fitness abilities, if you will, right? We want to be strong and mobile, muscular, but have good endurance, right? We want to be able to go the distance, be injury resilient, all these things. We don't care about being the best in the world at any one thing. We just want to be good to great, or at least fairly competent at a very wide range of things. That's what it means to be a generalist. And then minimalism really is just trying to always find that ideal intersection of effectiveness on the one hand, which is just doing the right things, and efficiency on the other, which is doing things right. And this is pretty critical. And I think once you think about it this way, it almost becomes trivial. Like, why would you ever want to be anything but a minimalist? But it's hard to actually get this into practice. So, kind of give a silly example, but it should illustrate the point that you can be effective without being efficient, and also efficient without being effective. If you want to gain upper body strength, you might be very efficient in your running technique and stuff like that, but that's not an effective effort for what your goal is, right? Conversely, you might be doing military presses and push-ups and dips to improve your upper body strength. Okay, effective in terms of what you're doing, but you might be wildly inefficient in your technique, in your programming variables, your sets and reps and intensity prescriptions and all of that, right? So the minimalist is somebody who's like, okay, how do we get the most juice from the squeeze? How do we get rid of all the clutter, right? We're constantly pulling weeds, getting rid of stuff that is just a distraction or a nuisance or just not really that worthwhile. So that way, the time you spend in the gym or at home training, you don't have to go to a gym or wherever, right, is actually going to produce meaningful and significant results. So
Mhm.
my whole approach to all of this is like, look, we're trying to become robust generalists, because that's what most people want and need anyways. Most people don't care about being hyper specialists in terms of professional bodybuilders or powerlifters. They just want to look good and feel good and do well in life and be healthy, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to do it through a minimalist approach. So that way our fitness efforts enhance our life overall, uh, don't detract from it, don't leave us feeling more depleted, more burnt out, but hopefully actually help to alleviate a number of these issues, if that makes sense. Mhm.
Yeah, 100% makes sense. And if your department doesn't provide that kind of environment, then all I can do really is appeal to your own sense of self-worth and self-preservation, and the preservation and worth of those around you, right?
Right.
Like, because yes, you should be advocating for change and an increase in implementation of effective and efficient standards. Like, I think that you should be that. If you were in a position, a department, whether that's, a union position that may have the ability to meet with admin or lobby for changes or work fitness into contracts or whatever, like, great. Go to battle for that. Like, do those things. But if your department isn't supporting you in that way, they're not
Mhm.
going to call you in and check your standards. They're not going to incentivize you. They don't really value it, which means they don't really value you. Another conversation. But do you value you? Like, do you think that your partner is worth you being able to get to them, and efficiently and effectively handle a situation that you may find yourselves in that's physically demanding? Are they worth it? Do you see yourself worth it? Do you think that your spouse or your kids or people who love you or care about you, do you think that they think you're worth it to take care of yourself? And again, not being God's gift to fitness, but being capable,
Yeah.
to be able to handle it. And of course, no, you can't predict every possible situation, but you should train with some specificity for the job. And the reality is cops are in some sense tactical athletes.
Hmm.
They're it's not like one thing is you're not training for just one repetitive physical task. It could be any number of things, which is why generalism is so important for cops to be generally capable across that broad spectrum uh, to be able to accomplish it. So if if you want to take that seriously on your own and knowing what you're up against, and I understand it, guys. I have been in the situation where I am literally sleeping uh, on the couch, like on my shift, we didn't have any females. So I would go into the female locker room and sleep on the couch during like 18 or 20-hour shifts and sleep. I was like the extra man to like fill the shift out, but they knew that I'd been working all day. And so like I would be sleeping at 2 or 3 in the morning and they would come wake me up if I needed to go somewhere. And I've been there. So I understand the frustration, but how if you are going to take the responsibility on yourself, how can we craft something that is minimalist, that doesn't require that, okay, now I know I've got this window of time. I'm burning out, but I've got this 4 hours that I can use in this day. I want to spend 3.5 with my family.
Hmm.
What can I do in that
Yeah.
30 minutes to make sure that I'm not losing my capabilities
Yeah.
in that general fitness ways?
Yeah.
What
Let's do
how
it.
how would you begin to craft that sort of thing?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's give a structure here. So I always like to give a range of options, right? And if you can fall somewhere within this range, I think you're going to see a lot of success. So let's talk two different things here, Mike. Let's talk the fitness side and then let's talk the nutrition side because we have to talk both. We're talking about health, right? So the way I like to present the fitness side from a minimalist and generalist perspective is sort of as a pyramid. You can kind of think of a food pyramid. Don't worry about what you think of the original food pyramid. It's just an illustration, right? Where the sort of what's at the bottom of the pyramid is the stuff that it's like your vegetables, right? Have as much of this as you can. The middle of the pyramid, this is important stuff. Try and get a fair amount of it. Top of the pyramid, little icing on the cake. Try and do at least a little bit of it, something like that, right?
Literally, just
Yeah,
a little bit of icing.
yeah, a little bit goes a long way. Bourbon to the sauce. All right, so let's fill it in. Bottom of the fitness pyramid is just low level daily movement, stuff like walking, right? Walking is something that like the more of it you can do, the better. And obviously, this is something you do a fair amount even on the job, right? Walking as much as you can. People talk about 10,000 steps. There's a lot of debate about that particular number. But if you just shoot to walk a lot every single day, minimally, if you can just get like 20 to 60 minutes of walking in per day, and this is something you can do with other people, you can do it with your family, right? This is I'm busy too, right? So when it comes to walking, I always try to do a walk with my wife and kids, right? And it's good for me to get my family involved in stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be walking. Like any sort of low level activity where you can maintain a conversation is really good stuff. It could be gardening, yard work, anything like that. Just activity, right? If you can try and do that every day, great, right? Then, sort of in the middle, what we want is that resistance training, which we talked about before. Somewhere between like 2 to 4 days a week, where you are working against some sort of external resistance. It can be it can be kettlebells, it can be barbells, or it can really just be internal, just your own body weight moving through gravity, stuff like that. Like modality or equipment is not really as important as the basic principles, such as progressive overload and stuff like that. So within the realm of resistance training, what we really want, if you want to just get the most kind of strength and muscle for the amount of time you put in, try to hit somewhere between like 10, for most people starting out 10 sets per major like muscle group or movement pattern per week is enough. And by muscle group or movement pattern, I mean you have like a push, a basic push, whether it's push-ups or military presses or bench press. You have a pull-ups, rows, stuff like that. You have a hinge like deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts. You have a squat, goblet squats, front squats, back squats, whatever you prefer. Body weight squats, fine too. So I like to categorize movements like pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting, and then the kind of fifth other category would be just a lot of just like carrying, right? I think carrying is a great category. twisting is good to have something like that in there. So the big movements, trying to get like 10 sets of progressive resistance training in there per week is going to do a lot of good for a lot of people. And to even be more specific with it, something pretty basic, within the 8 to 15 rep range is pretty good, where you're using enough resistance that you're working close to failure, but not to complete failure, is going to do a lot of good for most people there. And then at the top of the pyramid is kind of like your really sweaty metabolic conditioning type of work. And this, like once or twice a week, anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes is great. And you can even do it at the end of a resistance training session. This is the stuff like, this is where you do your sprints or your circuits or your kettlebell complexes, the stuff that you love to hate that does get you sweaty and breathing hard. You don't need a ton of that. And one of the mistakes that people make is they do way too much of that, like really tough, really sweaty metabolic conditioning work. They overdo that, but that really is the bourbon to the sauce of a good training program. A little goes a long way. What you really want to be spending more of your time on is that low level activity, stuff like walking, then the progressive resistance training, and then that icing on the cake or the bourbon to the sauce is that tough, sweaty, sprint-like metabolic conditioning, circuit training complex stuff. That's going to cover all your generalist bases, right? Oh, sorry. At the bottom of the pyramid, also any mobility work counts as well. Like if you like doing like mobility-based yoga classes, anything just to put your joints to a range of motion. Awesome. Get that in as much as you can. One of the things that I like to do is just a simple 5-10 minute morning mobility routine. This is stuff you can do on the job too, guys. Like you can always get down and just like do some hip flexor stretches, right? When you're
I have to
sitting
hop
around.
in here because this for me, and I think that my age, I'm 47 now. My age is like, hey, idiot, you left out the bottom of the pyramid.
This is the problem for most people. It
Because
really is. Yep.
I have feeling this, like I even realized this week, right? Like I've done 2 days of kettlebell training and 2 days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh yeah.
And
A little stiff, probably.
I was like, I going to bed last night, I was like, oh my gosh, is this age? Do I have a disease? Is my body riddled with a disease? What's going on? I'm so achy, but I'm like, I said, oh, you know what I should do today? I should do some like mobility and recovery. I should like stretch. I should
Yep.
like move a little bit, just slowly relax. I should go for a walk and just like get things moving a little bit. But I think that a lot of cops are like me. They like in the short time that they have, they undervalue throwing a backpack on with some weight in it and rucking for an hour versus, oh, I need to get into the gym and
Right.
go hit it hard, right? If I got a short time, and there's a far greater longevity benefit to that bottom of the pyramid than I've given it credit. And I think that most people do.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And not only that, but you can take sometimes a term that's used is movement snacks. You don't have to do this stuff all at once. You can have it throughout the day, right? When pretty much whenever you can find, 2 minutes to just hit the deck and do some stretches or T-spine mobilizations, or there's tons of very simple, basic exercises that will do a lot in terms of just keeping you well knitted, mobile, more resilient. You don't have to set an hour aside every time you do this stuff. Like just little bits throughout the day here and there have a very powerful cumulative effect, right? You don't even have to leave the environment you're in, right? Even when I work for myself like you, Mike, but dang, like when I'm in the middle of a project, just every once in a while, take a couple minutes from the computer, hop off to the side, do some basic like hip rocks, hip flexor stretches. The T-spine rotations are really good, effective. Only takes a couple minutes, but man, doing that throughout the day makes a huge, huge difference. And you're right. This is the part of the fitness scheme that most people totally miss out on. And I'll tell you what, if you're going from like doing nothing to just a lot of like intense, gym activity, weightlifting, that's going to catch up to you if you're not doing the bottom of the pyramid, right? In not a good way. So you have to prioritize the low level activity and the mobility work. No way to get away from it.
Let's see. Underpaid producer. That is my son I was telling you about, who is given the lights. Prepping meals for the right nutrition is probably what most people struggle with. It ain't easy, but the result of fast food for lunch are way more difficult than meal prep. That's true. Yeah, that's a choose your hard, right? Like, what are you going to do? So that was sort of like the fitness pyramid. So how would you
talk about
I
nutrition.
just talk about nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a good point being made here, and that is most people make less than ideal food decisions because based on convenience and time constraints and stuff like that. So I'll
I
get
should throw out there because yeah, Patrick Jordan said the biggest challenge is eating options while working. For sure. Yeah.
totally right. I get it. Believe me. All right, so let's cover basics first, and then we'll give some a strategy I think could be really helpful and make a big difference. Look, none of this is ever easy, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
life is all about managing compromises, and at some point, you're just going to have to do the harder thing. But we can try and make the harder thing not impossible, right?
Hmm.
So we just have to have realistic expectations. Like some things are just going to have to be more difficult. You'll have to give certain things up in the short term, but in the long term, I think you'll find that this was the best way, and a lot of other things become easier when you start getting this stuff in place, right? All right, so nutrition. All right, first key component. All right, we know when it comes to at least weight loss and healthy weight, there's kind of two big critical factors. One is caloric control. There's no really getting around this, right? You
Hmm.
got to get your calories under control. But then, like, which is almost like so obvious, it's almost not worth stating. Because the more interesting question is, well, how the hell do I do that, right? This is the
Right.
difficulty, right? But there's no magic trick getting around caloric control. And the reason it's worth emphasizing is that, at least from the best of what we know about the world of nutrition, I would argue both from common experience and the actual research on it, is that when you look at all the different dietary methodologies, when you control for calories, they pretty much come out the same, right? So like it really is the kind of master critical variable here, which is calories in, right? So what I'm saying is like high carb, low carb, intermittent fasting, paleo, keto, right? They all kind of come out the same when you control for variables. So, and in one sense, this should be kind of liberating for people because it shows like
Hmm.
there's a range of options that you can succeed with, right?
Yeah.
As long as you understand that it's going to come down to getting your calories under control, right? So you don't have
Hmm.
to do it just one way. You can be successful with a whole range of options, as people have been, but you can also fail with a whole range of options if you don't get this thing nailed, right? So that's part one to understand. Number two is there are some things that actually do come out in terms of making a very positive difference, and one of the biggest ones is protein intake. When you increase your protein, magical things really start to happen in terms of improved weight loss and satiety. Um, Generally, sometimes people here have a gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. That can be pretty high for people. I think a better recommendation is this: have a gram of protein per pound of target body weight per day.
Hmm.
So, whatever you want to weigh, that is how much you should have in grams of protein per day. So, if you want to weigh 160 pounds, then you target at least 160 grams of protein per day. And what you find, again, both in common experience and in the literature, is if you just focus on a simple protein target, a lot of other stuff sort of falls into place. You might have to troubleshoot it and focus on certain things later, but in terms of simplicity of like, if we're just going to give you a few things to focus on that are likely to make a major difference, this is one of them. Get your protein numbers up and target grams of protein per body weight per day. Now, in terms of convenience, and this is another strategy that is well supported in the literature. It's called a partial meal replacement therapy or strategic meal replacement therapy. It has fancy names like that, but really, what it means, Mike, is just have protein shakes or protein
Hmm.
bars, right?
Yeah.
And the idea here is, and this is something I've used with myself literally since high school, so it's very sustainable. I'm a little bit out of high school now, if it isn't obvious, right? But it was very
You would
effective
have
for
been
me.
so everybody would have really been jealous of your beard in high school.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Right. This wasn't happening back then, right? Um, but the idea is for, one, maybe two meals per day, right? Instead of the McDonald's drive-through or whatever, you just have a high quality protein shake or protein bar, right? And the reason this tends to work for people is pretty obvious, but it's worth stating is that you can put a lot of protein in a protein shake. They're also very convenient. They're very quick to make. You can make them at work or at home and just bring them, right? So there's a big convenience factor. There's also a cost effectiveness to them. But you can also put a lot of other things in a protein shake that you want, right? You could put fruits and veggies and healthy fats like almond butter and stuff like that, which I recommend you do. They help hit protein targets, and they also tend to be very satiating because you can also put a lot of fiber in them. You can add different fiber supplements, chia seeds, but also the fruits and veggies. So you're getting protein, you're getting fiber. Hopefully, you're getting a good, profile of micronutrients as well from the fruits and veggies. So they're like really good ideas, really good, really practical ideas. It's going to help keep hunger down, help you get those protein targets. Again, if you just focus on like these couple things, getting more protein and using strategic meal replacements, um, I'll tell you, Mike, like when I just work with people one-on-one, just like this alone makes a very, very big difference. And
Hmm.
it's not surprising that it does, right? Because like if you just replace 1 or 2 meals a day with a, even a pretty big protein shake, most people are actually going to be shaving off a bunch of calories, right? Getting in a lot better nutrition. That yeah, you're obviously going to lose weight,
Hmm.
and probably have a better nutritional profile overall, right? And it's one of those things where it kind of builds psychological momentum. Like when the first meal of your day is pretty healthy, like you feel good, right? And you tend to make better decisions the rest of the day, maybe even on through dinner, right? But if the first meal of your day is like a total flop, right? You go get the hash browns from Burger King and all that, like you feel pretty awful. And then it kind of creates that downward spiral. So I'm a big fan of like what you do first thing in the morning should be a win. Doesn't need to be a huge win, but it should be a win that kind of sets the tone and the trajectory for
Hmm.
the day, right? And then in terms of nutrition, other common sense rules apply. Like standard American diet stuff, we want to reduce it or eliminate it, right? Um, this means the hyper palatable foods. Hyper palatable foods are the stuff that answers to the slogan, you can't eat just one of them, right? Oreos, chips, like fatty, carby, salty. Everybody knows this stuff, right? This is the stuff that you just want to get out of your environment as much as possible. Out of your house for sure, right? But if you can get other people on board, like get it out of the work environment too. Really, like you got to try and make this a collective effort. And I can't emphasize this enough, one or the other. And this is something I don't have a great immediate solution to. Like maybe you have some ideas, but your environment makes a very big difference in your
Hmm.
outcomes, right?
Yeah.
If you are constantly working against your environment, success can be had, but it is a lot harder. It is a
Hmm.
lot more difficult. Your home environment, your work environment, the more environments you have to work against, the harder it becomes to be successful. But if you can get the structures in place that are at least not like trying to push you away from your goal or minimally neutral, right? Right.
Yeah.
Like the donuts aren't there. Like maybe it isn't protein shake set up for you, but the donuts aren't there, right? If you get the protein shakes set up for you, all the better, right? But at least neutral, it makes such a big difference, right? So
Yeah.
it's worth the point I'm trying to make is like it is so worth it to try and actively change or manipulate as many of your environments as possible so that they are conducive to your goal. You're not going to be able to do that all the time everywhere. But as far as possible, you need to try and make sure that the systems, the structures are in place in your environment that aren't constantly sabotaging you, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So all right, there's some stuff to start with, but we can keep going
Yeah.
in
No,
whatever direction
that's
you want. Yeah.
those are good things. Those are like if you could take that fitness sort of like concept and the nutrition concept and apply it, right, then that the battle is mostly won, minus consistency over time, right? Like not just doing it for the short term, but building in new disciplines
Right.
that are lifelong. And that's the thing is like, short term bursts are great, as long as those lessons learned are something that can continue on. And it's easier to continue on with something than you might think because it's funny because people is like, well, I like variety. And it's like, but they'll eat the same. They're only rotating two sugary, crappy cereals in the morning. It's like people who like claim that they need variety are usually eating all the same
Extremely
crappy,
monotonous of
bad
what they
foods
eat
all
and
the time.
watch and do.
Right. So
Right.
it's
Yeah,
like,
of course. Of
so like,
course.
I don't know. That's variety really the issue here, So, and, but Paul brought up a good point in the chat was like talking about everyone wanted to go get, a fat burger. If you got something nutritious, they gave you heat. And that's an environment issue, right? You need to kind of uh, find the people on shift or whatever that will be with you in that. And if not, then you really have to. I've discovered this is I used to I used to think that people who said that they wanted to be healthier or said that they wanted to be in shape or said that they wanted to lose weight, whatever, and just didn't really mean it. But
Mhm.
that's not necessarily true. I think there's like a hierarchy to it. You may truly want that, but you just want something more.
Right.
So
You
you
want social
yeah, I want
approval
social
more. Right.
acceptance
Yeah.
more than I
Hmm.
want
Yeah.
better nutrition.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
whatever.
let me say something about that really quick because this is important, right? And I've been through this. Like when I was trying to not be the fat kid anymore, most of my friends were still exactly like this. Hey, let's go hit McDonald's or whatever. And I would put my foot down and they would make fun of me for it, right? But here's the deal. 3 years later, who were they all coming to for fitness advice, right?
Right.
You losers, right? Right? You tried to stop me from doing this, and now you want my help. And of course, I helped them, right? And at
For
the end of the
double the price.
yeah, for double the price, right? So like, and at the end of the day, right, what you say is true. There's a hierarchy there. Like, what do you want most, right? That like people don't give you crap about eating the apple instead of the donut, or a body that actually works, right? And you really need to think about that. And there are going to be, and life is about managing compromises. Again, you have to be an adult about this stuff and just realize to get what you want, there's always something you have to give up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to make the decision that it's okay to sometimes be the odd man or the odd woman out, right? And that doesn't mean you're not going to be socially accepted. You might have to hear the annoying comment here or then, but like, believe me, like once you start getting to where you want to go, you're going to be the guy or gal that other people start looking up to,
Yeah.
right? On the other side of it, you are going to be the leader of the pack, right?
Yes.
So it's just like social acceptance that you want. Like you'll get it, maybe not at first, but you will be the person that people start coming to because they realize all the stuff that they were doing, they should have been doing the stuff that you were doing, right? So you have to deal with some annoying stuff starting out, but who the hell cares, honestly? In that grand hierarchy, it's pretty low as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, sort of like point this to somewhere practical for the people we're talking to. We have devised a plan to kick off a 90-day challenge. Now, we've been very fitness forward in this. Obviously, we're talking to a page that has subscribers that have come typically from the law enforcement, first responder field, or supporters. So that we know that's who we're talking to. And we've talked a lot about the fitness and nutrition stuff and some principles about that. But knowledge acquisition or acquiescence to agree to what we're saying is different than application. It's different than the actual discipline of doing something. And I don't know about you guys, but I have been greatly benefited in my life from these short-term type challenges or pushes that either instill a new set of disciplines or values into my life or remind me of that and help me maintain it, right? So like I really enjoy kind of these short-term sort of challenges that keep me in the game, as it were. And even though we've been fitness forward, I mentioned at the very beginning, Pat loves Jesus. So do so do I. We're actually on different sides of the Tiber, and if that means nothing to you, then that's okay.
But we're just so ecumenical, man.
But yeah, so I'm more of like an evangelical post denominational guy, and Pat is a committed Roman Catholic, and I love committed Roman Catholics. Most of you who are Catholic are not, and but I do I do feel like we're on the same team, and so we came up with this idea for a faith and fitness challenge that would be a 90-day sort of kick in the pants thing. And what does it include? We're gonna do. Pat's working on the workouts, like kind of planned for you, not done for you. We can't go that far, but planned for you workouts.
They'll all be written and spelled out. You'll know exactly what to do for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Body weight and a single kettlebell will get you through. So you've got time if you wanted to say like, hey, yeah, I want to get in on something like this and really start to apply what we're talking about. You have plenty of time to go find a cheap kettlebell at Play It Again Sports, or if maybe you have them at your gym already, you've got a Planet Fitness membership or Crunch or something like that, a global
Most
gym.
gyms
And
have kettlebells
yeah,
these days. Yeah,
so borrow one from your neighbor, Facebook Marketplace, whatever. You have time to get one. It doesn't have to be some top of the line thing or whatever. Just to do what we're doing. All the nutrition stuff that you're going to need, the principles behind that, sort of like, well, how do I know where to start with calories? How do I, maybe some basic concepts or recipe ideas. And then we're going to do daily scripture reading. We're going to walk through the Gospel of John. We're going to have two sort of like a morning and evening prayer rhythm. We'll give you some reasonings behind those things, some history behind those things. And then we'll have a private group where we're all there engaging and reflecting on these things that we're going through every day, the challenges that we may be facing, the questions we may have. We'll work on the spiritual discipline of fasting, not only physically, but maybe some other things that we're attached to in life that could be things that we can let go of for a while and learn from that. So that and maybe more is our intention for the 90 days. And if you want to learn a little bit more or commit to that, we are calling this Forge 90. So you can go to forge90.com and it's $99 for 3 months. And in the words of my son, who is going to pay to participate, that's cheap for 3 months of planned workout and nutrition.
Let me say a few extra things about it. First, I'm really excited to work on this with you, Mike, and lead people through this challenge, because it's something that for a long, I've done a lot of fitness challenges, but I've had a lot of men especially ask me, well, Pat, when are you going to do something like more holistic, right? For the whole person, literally the faith and fitness challenge. So linking up with you really presented the perfect opportunity to do this. And of course, not just for men. We welcome any women who want to take part as well. It'd be great. But for whatever reason, this seems to be something that a lot of men have really been wanting. And I think we're going to have something really awesome here. Secondly, is we talked about the importance of environment and community before. And part of the reason that these challenges can be so effective is you put yourself in a pool of other people who are committed to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Who can help hold you accountable, push you along, relate to the difficulties you might be facing, share the practical solutions they found. This is invaluable. And the other thing is like, well, why 90 days? It's to make sure that this quote unquote short-term thing becomes a long-term thing. 90 days, the length of a season, is really enough time that you can see very positive, often dramatic physical changes, but also really develop those new habits, hopefully some new virtues, right? That will set you up for that long-term success. So like it's short enough to be exciting, that's something you can really commit to, but long enough that it's going to set those structures and those habits in place, that it won't just be a 90-day thing. So we're pretty intentional about everything that's going in to this. Like Mike said, it's all very, very simple, straightforward. Workouts are minimalist. You're not going to be spending hours a day working out. It's direct or to the point, effective based on the principles we shared in this episode. Same thing with the nutrition, low barriers to entry, meaningful efforts, not crazy expensive either, right? I understand that people don't want to like have to shell out a ton of cash for like crazy exotic organic foods. None of that is required. Again, I'm all about making things as practical as possible and getting the best bang for your buck for whatever you do. So I'm pumped about it, Mike, and I hope people decide to join us on this. When are we starting again? We should probably mention that.
The challenge is going to kick off the day after Labor Day. So I think it's Tuesday, September 5th will be the first day of the challenge. And if you go to forge90.com and you purchase it, we make a note. I put a note on there. It's like, we will deliver the full PDF of what you need to know for the challenge that weekend. So,
so you'll have time to prep everything, right?
You've got time, and you'll know. We'll get that to you. That way you can kick off that Tuesday well. But we're still working on some of the details, but we will get that to you by then. So yeah, you can get it now and reserve your spot, and then we will deliver the information and then give you access to the Facebook group and all that stuff as it sort of like develops and unfolds over the next couple of weeks. So excited for what's to come. It'll be fun, right? Like, this is something that I'm already doing, right? I'm already exercising. I need more accountability in the nutrition area, and it'll be a great opportunity to do that together. It'll be it'll be a blast.
Join us, friends. Join us.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great, Mike. I appreciate you wanting to team up with this. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have some great workouts. We're going to see some dramatic changes. And I think in a way that will be meaningful to the type of work that many people on this page do, for sure.
Yeah, I hope so. So guys, if you see this, I know that obviously going live on a Friday morning, it's, not everybody's going to see this, but you might watch it back after the fact. And so you got any questions, you can always email me, mike@mikethecop.tv. If you're looking for Pat, Chronicles of Strength is the best thing. That's the handle for you pretty much everywhere,
Pretty
right?
much
Like on
everywhere.
Instagram
If you just type in Pat Flynn kettlebell on YouTube, my channel will pop up. You'll find me right away. Right.
yeah. So reach out to him if you've got specific questions about anything that he said or asserted, and you want to follow up with that. Feel free.
Please
Go
do.
give him a follow on social media. And then obviously Mike at mikethecop.tv is my email. You can reach out to me if you have other questions, but we're excited. And forge90.com, the address is right on the screen there. So feel free to drop there. And I have found that when you have that little voice in you that says like, man, I should probably do something like this, you should probably listen to it. And I'm not asking you to take food out of your family's mouth. So like for $99, like if you're up to your eyeballs in debt, I'm not necessarily saying like, yeah, go into more debt to get, this fitness challenge. But I'm saying if that voice inside of you is like, man, I should do this. I want to do this. There's something in you, then you know what? Do it. Right. Like it's not a big risk. It's not a massive commitment. It's doable. It's achievable. And it will push you out of your comfort zone and do some good things for you, I think.
And to that, I would say amen, brother. Hope to see you guys in Forge 90.
All right. See you guys later.